Hello, it is my pleasure to welcome you here today. My name is Veronica Bell. I'm the Manager of Community and Government Affairs, and I'm really excited for this event. We have two very special guests here today, but before I introduce our guests, I'd like to introduce our Googler. I'm sure she is a familiar face to most of you, Gretchen Howard. She's the Director of Global New Products and Solutions here at Google, which means that she handles our social sales strategy as well as our cross-product solution sales. She joined Google in 2006 and was the founding sales leader for the San Francisco office in 2007 when we opened. She studied history at Williams College and has her MBA from Harvard. She lives in San Francisco and has lived here for about 8 years and is raising her 2 children here, so she's familiar with all the wonderful parts of the city and some of the challenges in the city. It's also my pleasure to introduce a surprise guest, and a very welcome surprise guest, Mr. Ed Riskin, who's the Director of Transportation for the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. Mr. Riskin is in charge of many things in the city: muni, parking, traffic congestion, pedestrian planning, bicycle implementation, accessibility, and taxi regulation. And based on the questions from moderator, I think a lot of you will be thrilled to see him here. So he'll be answering our transportation questions. Mr. Riskin is also responsible for over 5,000 city employees in his role and manages a budget of $780 million. Before joining the SFMTA, he was the director of the Department of Public Works for the city of San Francisco. And he holds a Master of Public Administration from Harvard, an MBA from New York University, and a Bachelor of Science degree from MIT. He also lives in San Francisco with his wife and 3 children, and he rides Muni daily. So that was a nice part to read. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce the mayor of what's quickly becoming known as the innovation capital of the world, given his focus on tech, the 43rd mayor of San Francisco, Mayor Ed Lee. In addition to running on a tech platform, Mayor Lee has focused on balancing the budget, job creation, transit, and general quality of life within the city of San Francisco. Prior to becoming the 43rd mayor, Mayor Lee was deeply involved in public service for many years. He successfully held many roles in San Francisco, most recently as city administrator. He's also worked as the director of the Department of Public Works and was the executive director of the Human Rights Commission. Prior to dedicating himself to public service in 1989, Mayor Lee was the managing attorney for the San Francisco Asian Law Caucus. Mayor Lee was born in Seattle, graduated summa cum laude from Bowdoin College, attended Bolt Hall School of Law at the University of California in Berkeley. He's married to his wife, Anita, and he is the father of 2 daughters, Brianna and Tanya, and we are absolutely thrilled to have our guests here today. And with that, I will pass it over to Gretchen.
Well, thank you again, both of you, for joining us. I'm going to start off with a couple questions, but I know you guys are all very passionate about the topic of transportation, so feel free to start standing at the 3 mics in the room, and we'll go quickly to you guys as well. So I wanted to start off, and either of you guys can answer this, about telling us a little about the city's pilot bike program. Alternate and green transportation is obviously very important to Google, so we'd love to hear more about that program and your plans for it.
Well, if I may begin, first of all, I want to thank Ed Riskin, because we always think 2 Eds are better than 1, so especially coming into Google. I also want to point out Jay Nath. I brought him here too. He's our newest chief, the only nations in the mayor's office, chief innovation officer for San Francisco. So we've indicated our support for technology helping us deliver services better in the city by naming Jay Nath our chief innovation officer. And I also want to thank Sarah Lacey for being here as well, and thank you for starting up your 2nd company here in the city as well. Thank you.
Sorry for being late.
No, that's okay. Ron Conway, thank you for your work and help as well. Wonderful partners that we're creating and establishing here as I embark on my first political office in my life. I don't know if you know that. I've never run for office before, but this city is worth every sacrifice. So of course, running for this office meant a lot, and I did mean it. We are on a technology innovation platform, and you're going to see a lot of things changing in our government to make it better, and hopefully with your participation. Having said that, the very first topic on bicycles, both Ed and I are very big bicycle enthusiasts. We've been extremely supportive of not only the Bicycle Coalition, but for the infrastructure that's needed. And we are both, by the way, former directors of Public Works Department. And so we know the roadways very well in the city and their conditions. And that's why we joined together very solidly this past year to promote and did successfully help pass the city's first pavement bond program that will get our streets smoother so that the bicycle experience, along with cars and shuttles and everything else, can ride smoother, because we've heard so much about the famous and the infamous potholes in the city. The bicycle bike sharing program, it's one that has been in contemplation works for years. I might even think in decades, because I remember as my previous public works director spot, I was involved with the former MTA director in trying to get input about which of the bike sharing programs that we would choose from. And we were very focused at that time on a company called JC who had started it in Paris. I was pushing that very hard because I had been the introducer of the JC public facilities, public toilets. And I thought that they had worked really well, and I think the bike sharing program, the same kind of concept, public-private partnership, setting it up, having these bikes all over the place. MTA decided they would put out the bid, and they bid it out, and I think they went through years of kind of start and non-start, and that got very much delayed. Fast forward, we now have a vendor already in place, and instead of just making it a San Francisco program, we've, I think smartly, made it a Bay Area collaborative program with all the other transit agencies. And maybe that's the best way to introduce all the details that Idris can go into on the Bay Area's bike sharing program and how it will start and when it will start and what we have in mind immediately.
We are going to launch this summer. We are doing it, as the mayor said, in collaboration with the region. We're going to start with, we're doing a pilot because that's what we were able to get funding for. We got a grant from the Regional Air Quality Management District. We're going to start with a pilot with 1,000 bikes. 500 will be in San Francisco, and the balance in the peninsula, largely along the Caltrain corridor. In San Francisco, they're going to be concentrated kind of down here along the waterfront from the Caltrain station up through Fisherman's Wharf, mostly on the kind of the flat northeast part of the city. We're currently working on getting the locations for the bike share pods. It'll work pretty much like car share works, for those of you who are familiar with that. The main difference being is that you can return to a different location. So you pick it up at one pod, you can ride down to Fisherman's Wharf and leave it there, and you're done. You can take the F line back. We are seeking, we're working with the owner of this building to see if we can get a pod placed right here. There's a number of other locations around here. We're trying to get them every couple of blocks. We've done a lot of research into best practices and what works in terms of spacing, in terms of critical mass of locations that you need in order to make a system viable. So we hope to have it up and running this summer. We have funding for, I think, 1 year. I'm looking for my bike share guy who's here. But there's incredible enthusiasm. I just came from the Transportation Research Board meeting that was happening in Washington, D.C. this week, and heard Chicago was about to roll out a 4,000 bike pilot, New York, a 10,000 bike program. The momentum for bike share across the country is really picking up. So I have no doubt, despite the fact that our funding is limited now, and we're starting with what I think is a pretty modest 1,000 bike program here, that we will be able to both sustain and ramp it up soon thereafter. So we're very excited about it. Cycling is a huge part of how we're going to accommodate the growth in San Francisco. And I noticed the intro said I was in charge of traffic congestion, which I don't know if that's, I don't know if that was in the bio that we provided to Google. I like to think I'm more in the
Maybe
more
the
in charge
elimination of
right,
traffic
decongestion
yes.
is something, and cycling is a big part of that. Getting people out of their cars and onto transit or on bikes is really how we're going to manage the amount of people we have currently in San Francisco, but more importantly, the growth that we see that's going to be coming.
And I just want to reemphasize that it is not just the bikes themselves and availability and the vendoring. We've done all of that. It really is. We passed successfully a $248 million street repaving bond. And of course, that's going to help us with that very necessary infrastructure to make the bicycle experience positive. We've got pedestrian safety involved in that $248 million. Those contracts are already underway. They're being, we just sold the bonds for them as part of a $327 million bond passing of it, and the street bonds was part of that to get through the board. And so that's all being set up, and you'll start seeing, literally in a matter of weeks, some of these smaller parklets and streets getting under repavement right away. So it's all coming together, I think, in a very timely way.
So speaking of safety and bicycling, my understanding is that there was a project on Oak and Fell, which a lot of our folks bike down those and back and forth to this office, that there was a delay, the MTA delayed the creation of a separated bike path due to protests from removing car parking. Can you comment on that, and how do you balance the needs of those two different constituents?
Yeah, it's a great question. I live on the Wiggle, and I don't have a car, so when I'm not on Muni, I'm on my bike, which is frequently. So I know the area very well. It's a critical connector from the Mission and downtown out to the west side of the city. We actually didn't delay. We haven't delayed anything. Our kind of permanent, our schedule for a permanent solution remains where it is, which would have something in place next year. We had been talking about trying to pilot something sooner, but we have run into a pretty significant amount of opposition from the folks in the directly impacted neighborhood. And San Francisco, as those of you who live here know, is a very process-intensive city. And we don't want to steamroll over folks and leave them with a kind of bad taste in their mouth and have them hurling rocks out their windows at the cyclists as we go by. So we're taking the time to try to find ways in which we can mitigate the parking loss. This is a transit-first city, and the transit-first policy that was adopted by the board nearly 40 years ago, it's not transit only, it's really getting people out of their cars. So, generally, in a trade-off between bicycles and parking, bicycles should win. But we also have, people who have moved into neighborhoods, who have bought houses, who have established themselves with a certain expectation for how they're going to be able to use their car. And so we want to kind of work with people. We want to educate people about how it benefits them as car drivers to get more people onto bikes. But we are trying to work through the issue. So we've been having a series of community meetings, and those will continue. I think the next kind of next big one is going to be in March. And I know the mayor, when he first heard about this early in his appointed term, was very eager to see something on the ground quickly, as is our board. So with all due haste, we will aim towards doing that.
Actually, and more importantly, I think both Ed and I have ridden that route, and we experienced it, not only for the quality of the route, looking at pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, the balance, and I'm supportive. We're going to give leadership to this to make sure it happens. We had just concluded, I think, some very good agreement on the JFK route, and we just literally finished that. We had to actually balance out some challenges from the people from the disabled community to get that done, but we did it, and we were very focused on it, and I think we're proud to say that you're going to see the JFK route go blend in right into the Panhandle and the Wiggle, and so this is just another extension, in our opinion, about it, but we got to go through that process, and you'll see that happen.
And I believe in JFK, the parking loss may have been greater even than what we're anticipating on Oak and Fell. It's a much longer stretch, but it's an example of where, in this case, it was really the Rec and Park Commission, made the difficult policy call to make that trade-off and to give more of the real estate in the right-of-way to bicycles at the expense of cars.
And I can attest personally that you are a biker, because your office invited me to bike with you last spring, and I was 9 months pregnant, so I had to decline. But So switching from bicycling to Central Subway, which is an interesting topic. So I've heard this referred to as a pork barrel project with a faulty design. So I would love for you to just address that issue and also talk about why would we invest in this without fixing Muni first?
Well, you know, while we're fixing Muni, while we're improving service, while we're trying to take care of labor issues that have really prevented us for quite some time to be as efficient as we should be, I don't think that we have to wait for our future to arrive and tell us we're too late. Our future's already here. It's no different than our welcoming of the tech companies. We know our future rests with the future industries and the future places where people are going to live. So we figured out quite some years ago, the new housing is not going to be in the Sunset or the Richmond. It's going to be in Mission Bay and Hunters Point. That's the last area of open land that we have. How do we connect up the next 10,500 new units of housing that are going to be built and already are planned to be built in that area? How does transportation work for them in the very near future? This Central Subway has been in the works for a couple of decades. And it has often been said, and you know, I'm sorry that it took a political nature to it during the mayoral campaign because I think it got misrepresented at that time. It was approved time and time again as the best transportation answer to the housing and the needs of our future city. And so this link that will go from 4th Street down near Townsend, where the Caltrain station is now and where the 3rd Street ends, all the way up through Chinatown, is going to be invaluable to link up the north and south to be able to have that transportation that right now, if you see the transportation that goes up and down the north, and if you ride the 30 Stockton Street, you can't get on it. There are times of it you just can't get on it. It's so crowded. And do we want the future of this city to crowd more vehicles and a very congested streets between north and south? I think the answer is the subway. No other jurisdiction in the country has ever rejected a subway when they've got it built. What they have done is they regretted the opportunity, as we did, to extend BART where it should have gone, and we regret that. You know, right now we're going all the way down Geary Street and reached Richmond if we had been smarter during those years. Now they're finally making it to San Jose. How many people are jumping up and down that? A lot of people. So I think this is going to be our answer. Yes, it does cost when you're tunneling. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars. Most of that is gotten through our federal Department of Transportation, and I was there just a week and a half ago, and we got some good news. We got confirmation that this letter of non-prejudice, which is a very critical letter that comes just before the final grant agreement of full funding from the feds, was nodded to us, and that allows us to spend another $250 million on the tunneling equipment that we need, the tunnel under Stockton Street and rebuild the station in Chinatown. And there's about 4 stations that are being built as part of this whole thing. Ed?
Yeah, very well said. I guess all I would add, 2 things. One, in terms of the design itself, I think the mayor kind of spoke to the need that the growth is coming. We need to accommodate it regardless, really, of the state of our current system. And just so people know, the impact, the net additional operating impact of the Central Subway, once it's open for service, would be less than 2% above what we have now. So pretty marginal operating impact. But the mayor mentioned that the planning for this started about 20 years ago. The real kind of heavy planning, environmental process and design started maybe 6 or 8 years ago. It went through maybe 300 community meetings, a very exhaustive CEQA and NEPA, the environmental review processes, a lot of work to get consensus in terms of what's the best technical solution, the best financial solution, the best operational solution, and that's what got us to the design we have today. So, you know, for folks in the heat of a mayor's campaign to look back on decisions that were made through an exhaustively, rigorously vetted process and say it should have been on 3rd instead of 4th, or you should have tried to come on top of the BART tube instead of under, you know, every possibility was analyzed and vetted. This is probably the most rigorously studied public works project in the history of San Francisco because of the federal funding and the rules that come with it. So we're very confident that we have the design that will be the best bang for the buck, that will work operationally, and that reflects the consensus of San Francisco during the 300 community meetings that it went through. And then in terms of, is it that or fixing Muni, it's got to be both.
Right.
We've got, my job one is to make Muni more reliable, because that is the core of making transit first work in San Francisco. So we don't at all see it as, well, let's let Muni decline and let's build this fancy new project. We've got to do both.
Many of you, if you're interested, and I think you are, to live in a great, wonderful city of San Francisco, you'll find the housing that we're building probably be pretty attractive when you start looking at the hillsides of Hunters Point and you view it over the bay. It's beautiful down there. We don't want you to have two cars. We just can't have that in our city. We've got to have a integral, multimodal transportation for our city, and Central Subway is going to be, I think, the provider of a great part of that solution, along with bicycling and along with employee shuttles and along with our Muni, of course. But I think we are considering your future when we make this decision, and we want you to be here in the city, but we also don't want you stuck on 4th Street for hours and then complain, who was that mayor? Who were those two Eds? What were they doing?
The two Eds. All right, we're going to open up the field to questions. Take a couple more transportation questions, then we're going to actually switch topics.
On the topic of adding new housing and while accommodating transit, transit works well when density is high, and it doesn't work when density is low. A lot of San Francisco is astonishingly low density. 2 or 3 story buildings, a lot of individual family homes. When we add new development, are we trying to make sure that that new development is high enough density to make transit viable?
First of all, your premise is obviously correct. You need a critical mass to make transit work. You need density to get that critical mass. San Francisco is I think, generally the second densest city in the country after New York. So even when you're out in the Richmond and the Sunset, if you look at dwelling units per acre, it's very high relative to most of the country. And transit does or can work there. It should work there. I'm working on
Gary
it.
Bus, not so much. Yeah.
The L is good. 38L, I mean. In terms of, as we're planning forward, there's really 2 parts of that. What the city saw 5 or 10 years ago is most of the growth was going to be coming to the eastern side of the city. So the city undertook a number of planning processes. The big one was the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan, which was adopted by the Board of Supervisors a couple of years ago, that along certain areas does some pretty significant upzoning. Same happened with the Market Octavia Plan, the Balboa Park Plan. So in areas that were not really fully built out, the plans that the city adopted do exactly that. They allow for a lot more density. They have parking maximums instead of minimums. So they're very much geared towards that. In the big growth areas, what the mayor was just referring to, Mission Bay and Hunters Point Shipyard, they have their own plans, and they're even much more aggressively, since they're starting from a clean slate, much more aggressive in terms of density and minimizing car use. As the mayor said, we can't have everybody in Hunters Point having 2 cars. So the land use and transportation planning for those happen together, the same with Treasure Island, the same with the Park Merced redevelopment. So everything that we're doing going forward will much more reflect that integration of land use policy and transportation planning, so that we'll really have the density. The transportation plan for Hunters Point Shipyard, for example, has a very significant transit build out that's associated with it, because it's being built for people to use transit.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question from the middle?
2 questions. One is, I've heard proposals for adding some sort of suspended bike lane to the western span of the Bay Bridge, and I'm wondering if you have any insight into that and any opinion. And then the other thing about the Central Subway line, we've seen in other transit projects, particularly BART, that there will be grand plans for transit systems that connect urban areas with the extended suburban areas. And what always seems to happen is that the cost of laying rail in an urban infill area becomes so high that they do all the development in the suburban areas, usually hand in hand with developers there, and they never get around to doing the difficult urban bits. I'm sure you're aware how long BART has been talking about an extension to Warm Springs and San Jose, and it's just never going to happen. So I would like to know, as you start to build this central subway, are you going to tackle the difficult bits first, or are you going to start down in Hunters Point?
So let me take the second one first. The 3rd Street Light Rail project runs from Visitation Valley to Chinatown in its first 2 phases. The first phase is already built from Viz Valley up to 4th and King. So what the Central Subway project is phase 2, which is going from 4th and King to Chinatown. The project, we expect to get our grant agreement from the federal government within the next couple of months, a $942 million grant agreement. With those funds, we will have a fully funded project of about $1.6 billion, of which $250 million is contingency. So on a percentage basis, it's got a huge, very, very conservative, overly conservative contingency that the federal government is requiring us to carry. So we will have a fully funded project that we will absolutely be able to complete, hopefully be able to return some of that contingency money back. So it's a relatively short project that we'd be building. So we will not ever be in a situation where we've started drilling the hole and are going to run out of money or have to stop. In terms of BART to San Jose, they actually just got a grant agreement from the federal government, the same program that we're applying for. So I think theirs is going to happen. The last piece to get all the way into downtown San Jose is still not funded. BART expansions out to Livermore or Antioch, those start to really raise the questions you're talking about is, should we expand out further where it's easy, or should we really focus on infill development? And without getting into it, the Bay Area is undertaking this whole regional land use and transportation planning process. If you go to onebayarea.org, there's a lot of kind of good information there, and the region is ultimately going to choose a growth scenario. It's either going to be kind of continuing to sprawl out, or it's going to be focusing more inward. And we're hopeful in San Francisco that it's going to be the focusing more inward strategy, which is going to make other transit projects in the city more viable, such as even infill BART stations, such as maybe Mission and 30th, to put a BART station in there, as opposed, if it's down to that or extending to Livermore, that's the choice that the Bay Area as a region is going to have to make. In terms of the bikeway right out here, I think it'd be great if it would happen. I know the East Bay Bicycle Coalition has been pushing hard for it. From what I understand, it'd be an extraordinarily expensive project. There's no funding source for it now. So I'd say just in practical terms, it's probably fairly far-fetched. But the fact that the new bridge, which we're hoping will be open in time for the 2013 America's Cup, on the other side will at least allow people to get to Treasure Island. And then as we build out Treasure Island, we'll have much better transit service, both buses and ferries, to get people to San Francisco. And at some point down the line, maybe we'll get the bike lane on the west span as well.
And I'm an incredible optimist on things like that. And I think that it will be impossible if we only think one-dimensional that government should pay for it. I think that there's enough ridership and interest here, a public-private partnership to do something spectacular and link it to the bike lane that will be on the New Bay Bridge from Treasure Island to the other side. It's got to be a fantastic ride. And I would put up some private money if I had it to help, because I think it'd make the San Francisco Bay Area that much more spectacular of a fun place. It's fun. It would be absolutely fun to have that ride. So when you talk about both entertainment and recreation and sports, it's never just government doing it. I think public-private approach might be a very incredibly good one.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take one more transportation question, and then we're going to change topics.
So lately there's been a lot of talk about, high-speed rail, whether it's going to happen, whether it's not. I know most of it falls outside of like the jurisdiction of San Francisco, but how is uncertainty about that affecting your planning for transportation, whether you're going to be building like a new high-speed rail station, and if funds don't get used for that, how is it going to be used for other transportation projects?
So I can start on that. First of all, we in San Francisco and largely in the Bay Area, though not unanimously, very supportive of high-speed rail. Every elected official in San Francisco at the local, state, federal level, very supportive. We see the value looking to in the future of California, being able to be able to move people between San Francisco and San Jose, and then on down south to LA is critical to the future of California, just incredibly important for its economy, for its job growth. For the same reasons that we have a transit-first policy here, we're not going to be able to accommodate all the growth in California all through highways and the airways. We need to catch up with the rest of the world and get high-speed rail moving. In terms of the Transbay project, that was conceived before high-speed rail was really a topic of conversation. I think that we all believe in the transportation realm anyway, and the land use planners, that getting rail to downtown San Francisco is critical. So I think the way we're looking at it is, first, we're advocating hard to keep high-speed rail on track, but see that as, that's kind of icing on the cake. The core project is to get this intermodal terminal built. A significant amount of bus traffic comes in there. The buses alone are in need. The people who ride the bus are deserving of a decent place to land and transfer. But we see the extension of Caltrain into the terminal is really a must-have for the future of San Francisco and for the ability of people to be able to move between San Jose and points in between. So we see that that has merit, very strong merit on its own, to get the project built and then to connect it, to connect the rail, basically to extend from 4th and King right to here at the Transbay. And then if high-speed rail comes and can make it happen faster, all the better. What we're proposing to the High-Speed Rail Authority is to move forward with the electrification of Caltrain and the extension, the downtown tunnel to extend from 4th and King to here, which would get you, 80 or 90% of high-speed rail from San Jose to San Francisco about 20 years faster than what their business plan calls for, and for less than a third of the cost. So we think we have a good solution that kind of threads the needle and gets the rail connectivity we need, kind of regardless of what the long term of high-speed rail is.
I'd also want to make a pointed argument here. If you go to our airport and you understand the flights, 1/3 of all of our air flights in San Francisco Airport is the LA-San Francisco commute. And we cannot and we won't be building additional runways in our bay. So what do we do with our future marketing? Well, for a company like Google and all the other tech companies, your future is part of this question. Because if we cannot expand the flights for international travel, we are strangling ourselves for the global market. And so our vision is to move that 1/3 of that commute onto high-speed rail and then allow our airport to receive that 1/3 in international flights. That's our global marketing future. And if I'm going to sell San Francisco homemade products here to China and to Japan and to Southeast Asia, I've got to have those international flights. We can't do that without high-speed rail, moving that transportation onto a better place. So that's literally big. Now, great news came just last week. Jerry Brown stepped up. This is on top of his transportation priority. President Obama wanted to hear that because they're there. Secretary LaHood told me that. They're there with us. And then you have, through the state of California, the top 10 mayors of all the major cities, from LA all the way to San Francisco. We are in concert, and that includes both Democrats and Republican mayors, are all on board with this high-speed rail. So I, again, optimistic, because I think that we are doing and making the right decision on this.
Thank you very much.
Great. All right, so that ends our transportation segment. So a huge thank you to our special guest, Mr. Riskin, half of Team Ed. Thank you. So feel free to come to the mic with any questions you may have for Mayor Lee. I'm going to start it out with talking about technology. So you ran, part of your campaign was all about technology and improving the technology for the city, which I think all of us here applaud. How are you going to pull that off given your issues with the budget and just the outdated technology that the city has today?
Thank you. Well, I'm certainly going to pull it off in a way in which it's not just an announcement, it's for real. I think we asked Ron and others to come and meet with us and get the best ideas. And we start off with inviting you, Google, as part of SF City, which we've created is a collaboration. It's kind of what I refer to as the Technology Chamber of Commerce, if you will, for San Francisco. And we made a commitment with initial 85 companies that are in the tech world that include Google and others that are going to help us with actually two areas to start out with. The first area is how do we make sure one of my number one goals is accomplished with the technology companies, that is the creation of jobs and getting job training and making sure there is a curriculum out there that reflects the kinds of skill sets that your company needs and how we can get our kids excited about making sure that they fulfill that, along with those that want to change or need to change their careers and are in mid-career, along with the returning veterans. How do they get that curriculum? What is that training? Where do we go? We're creating that as we speak. The other part is a special partnership that we had under this umbrella with SF City, is our relationship, and this is where Jay Nath comes in, is to create that relationship, special relationship with Code for America, in asking that startup acceleration come into government, and that I'm not afraid of using the words, we need some hackathon solutions to Muni, to the way we deliver services, the way we buy things, the way we communicate. We just need that advice, and we need that constant push, if you will. So I decided to bring that right into the mayor's office through the innovation officer and make that a relationship at the top of where government decisions are made. And then you're going to be able to see these ideas as they come out. We'll test pilot some things. And right off the bat, I use an example when I was at the Conference of Mayors last week, our SF Park. If you've ever had a chance to use that, for those of you that do drive, SF Park is one of our answers to traffic congestion, in that I often say I used to do the dumbest thing when I was youthful. I used to drive around and look for parking. And I thought I was smart enough. I didn't realize I was competing with the 10 others in the same block, creating congestion, creating more emissions, stalling Muni behind us, creating a little more traffic for our bicycling, and realizing all of that. We have an application that allows you, through the censoring process that we made for the selected areas of the city where we have the sensor, tells you all the parking spaces, tells you where they're empty, tells you the price they are in the garages as well as on the street. And we're about to launch that citywide if we get the funding for it, but the test piloting of this for the last year has been incredibly positive. And it's that blend of technology helping us figure out something like parking congestion. Next around is kind of like Uber. Where's my taxi? Do I have to go to that corner, or can the taxis know where I am and come to where I need them instantly? These are the kinds of things that I think we can figure out. They're very customer-oriented, they're citizen-oriented, and we named SF City precisely because it's citizen initiative for technology and innovation. We need those ideas, and I am very willing to open up not only data, I want to be able to open up the way we manage and make decisions in government so that we can blend technological solutions to how we deliver services, whether it's a homeless person or someone in need shelter, or whether it's medical care, or whether it's just social services or public safety. I think all of those can be exposed to a high level of technology to get us better service, because I have to reduce government spending. We're there at a critical point. And I know some of you are going to ask, 26,000 employees for 810,000 population is just a little large. I think we need to be smarter, and I've committed the next two budgets we're going to reduce yet further potentially at this point, probably through attrition, the number of employees. But we're going to make the employees that we do have smarter and more both accessible, but also better managers of their work plans through technology.
I love hearing launching, iterating, transparency from from the mayor's office. It's not words that we've heard before. So this is fantastic.
It's going to be more than words because I've got people now that actually can implement, and so we're not afraid to do that. And we've got to be, I think in the word of hackathon, experimenting. I've got to be able to try some things and then be willing to make the kind of mistakes that you make in acceleration, but then move on. So
great. All right. Question.
Speaking of technological solutions, there was actually Google Moderator where Googlers could vote on questions. Last I checked, this was still one of the top 3 voted on questions. And before I sort of ask this, I just sort of want to frame this. I'm not American, I can't vote, so I didn't actually have a horse in the last mayor's race. But my question is this. You had stated that you weren't going to run for mayor. You did, you won. And how do you plan to regain the trust of the Board of Supervisors who you have to work with closely as mayor to get things done when you broke that promise?
Mm-hmm. Well, I did change my mind. So if a promise was made, that's been changed, and I explained that already. And actually, I have to tell you, if you ask me to describe the mayor's relationship with the Board of Supervisors since the election, we're moving legislation along. You saw America's Cup get unanimous thumbs up. You got all the important legislation for job creation are there. I think we're having very healthy conversations, even with people who competed with me. I had John Avalos in the office yesterday, and we've agreed as how we're going to, and he knows I'm just as strong of an advocate of local hire, and that's been one of his pinnacle programs that he ran on, local hire. Well, we're just as strong. And so based upon what we need to get done for the benefit of the city and improving the city, I don't think the mayor's race is getting in the way at all. I think, in fact, people say it's water under the bridge. Let's move forward. Let's get an agreement on what we do to improve life for everybody. And everyone has come aboard on the whole theme of job and economic stability because whenever you say, and I'll repeat again, I started as an interim mayor in January. Unemployment rate was 9.5%. December, 12 months later, 7.6%. You can't argue with numbers. You can't argue with 17,000 more people who got jobs because we all stayed together. Just 3 months of political battering shouldn't disturb 4 years of willingness to work together with the board. So I find David Chu great to work with. I find John Avalos great to work with. Phil Ting is often running something else, but he's still good to work with as a tax assessor. Not only are we getting along, I think we have in front of us those critical issues we're supposed to be working on as a city. I sit on that at our inauguration. I'm not one to batter anybody because, again, I repeat, I'm not really a politician. But I am, and I want to be the best mayor I can be. And the only way you become, I think, the best mayor is you work with everybody, and then you focus.
Just a really quick follow-up question. Do you think you've regained their trust?
Well, I think not instantly. Trust is always something that you build and build around. And so I believe that the things that I've worked with, for example, with David Chu in Chinatown, we immediately said, let's do something for Stockton Street merchants. And I don't know if you knew this, during the 10 days before Chinese New Year's, we both agreed to do these parklets along Stockton Street to allow the merchants to use it. We both agreed to do that, and we both signaled our willingness to work with each other. We created the first car sharing on the street in his district, and it took cooperation with the mayor's office and him to be able to do that. Projects that we both care about and we build and we do together and we share the credit for and we also share the blame for their failure, that's how you build trust. It's on those projects. You don't ask for it, you don't demand it, you build on it, and that's the way we're doing it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Question from the middle?
Yeah, on the subject of innovation and hackathons, et cetera, are you familiar with the Code for America thing, or can you talk at all about that? It's something that Google has been sponsoring, and I think this is the first year that it's going to be happening in San Francisco.
Yes, well, we have talked to the director of Code America. We invited her in, and we've made a starting agreement that we're going to be working and exposing a number of different departments, beginning not only with their data, but just talking through how they operate and what Code of America and the signaling to some innovating startup companies who would like to make this something that they want to do as their startup companies is take some of the challenges, hack out some ideas, and then work on some solutions with us. And then those departments will make the commitment to implement those solutions and see whether or not they can actually get the results that we anticipate. That's how we envision the Code for America to work with us. And we're just literally starting that dialogue and that relationship. But we've already got things to paper. We've got meetings set up, and we've already made the introduction of the director of Code America to our through Jay Nath as our chief innovation officer. So he's going to be our liaisons with Code America and creating those relationships with the various departments.
Great. All right, I think we have time for 2 more questions.
Okay. First of all, I'm a third-generation local and a 20-year homeowner here in the city. And I have to say thank you for running, because I voted for you with more enthusiasm than a lot of mayors in the past, let's say. Now, having softened you up here.
Okay, slap me.
The Department of Rec and Park, and I ran these numbers quickly, but my understanding is they've lost more than 25% of their funding from the general fund over the last, I think it was 5 years, at the same time that the general fund has grown, I believe, by 20%. Given your concern for quality of life in San Francisco, what are your plans to support the Department of Rec and Park?
Well, as you know, I've worked with Phil Ginsburg. He was the chief of staff in the first 4 years of Gavin Newsom's mayorship, and we got along very well. He exposed me to a number of park advocates in my previous positions, and then we've kept that relationship very strong. I usually honor those I worked with in the past, and while I won't say that Phil gets whatever he wants when he walks in, he knows what's going on, and so he can penetrate anything I say to get past it. But we've all agreed, for example, the next parks bond is something we both want to do, and it's up. It's up for November. We are putting together the details of that now. It'll be a major bond, but it'll be one that reflects, I think, the commitment that we have for families, for open space, for children's programs. It will be a serious amount. We'll also be honoring the tax levels that we have in the 10-year capital infrastructure plan. That's just one aspect. The other part is I'm a big supporter of he and Mark Beal's approach towards public-private partnerships, because as they lost that 25%, they gained, I think, an incredible amount, and that's why I wanted to back them up on this play with the botanical gardens, because we're working on maybe for residents turning back and maybe making the Japanese tea garden free for residents, because we've got corporate sponsorships on that. It's not giving away anything. The private, I don't understand how anyone in this city who's paying attention to what we're doing can accuse us of giving anything away when the infusion of private dollars is all about upping the quality for our residents and making it more affordable for everyone. I approached that with Sharp Park. I approached that with everything that we've done. And so I think the public-private partnerships are not only here to stay, they're here to grow with us. The incredible amount of nonprofits and resident leadership that we have for our neighborhood parks is, I want to honor them, because I think that's so much a reflection of what San Francisco is about. And so you're going to see a good bond reflect, I think, this attribute of our great lifestyle in San Francisco.
Thank you. Great. All right, last question for Mayor Lee.
All right, thanks for coming. A lot of the topics you talked about today were about bringing new talent, new innovation into the city. My question was more on the lines of keeping it here. My wife and I just moved up here a year ago with our 1-year-old daughter. We live up on the hill in Noe Valley, and the other day we were on our roof deck and we're thinking we want to live here forever. It's our favorite city. It's awesome. We've lived in a lot of places before. But when we talk to a lot of our friends and talk amongst ourselves, the number one reason why people want to leave the city has to do with education. And as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lottery system and there's a risk that your kid can get placed in a school across town. Some of the non-English programs that have kind of been rebranded under this Orwellian Mandarin immersion programs. And we're just trying to think of how we navigate this and how we can keep ourselves and our friends in town with what seems to be a lottery system that was started with good intentions but leads to a lot of sort of mediocrity across the board.
Thank you. That's probably very challenging because also the school district's always being challenged. And if you pay attention to what the state's doing, and they're about to say if they can't figure out their budget crisis, they put it down on the locals, and guess what? Education gets cut. Makes it much more difficult. Our city has an annual infusion of $30 million to our school district. Unlike any other jurisdiction in the whole state of California, we didn't see layoffs in our school district. So I'm going to keep that tradition up because I know and I truly agree with you, education is absolutely critical. That's why I put a big emphasis on employment training with all of you here, because that's part of the whole education thing. That's the extended education that we need for your industry to be successful. The school districts are continuing to improve. The last 3 years have always been performance improvements, and I work very closely with Superintendent Garcia. The previous board president, Hydra Mendoza, works for me. She's my education advisor. She's the board president. Now Norman Yee has just taken over, and he's the board president. He'll be working closely with me. In fact, we're meeting next week, and we're going to be kind of on a very regular basis. How do we support them and their constant improvement, not only in the classroom, but their processes to get more parent involvement in their schools. I believe neighborhood schools has to be the key, because the schools that have the parental involvement are the ones that succeed the most. They are also the ones where the parents go out of their way to get private support for what the school can't do. We need all of that. It's just no different in our parks. Quality parks are where there's immediate neighbors that are investing in it and make it theirs. The
So
school.
just to clarify on that, when you say neighborhood schools, that's not with the lottery system today. That's not how it works. Like I live within walking distance of 3 elementary schools, but the chances that my kids would actually get into one of those 3 schools, even though location is now part of the ranking, is minimal. So how do you?
Well, we're still statistically. We're still 85% of parents are getting their first choices. Now, I don't know how true that is. That's what's been reported to me, and I will get personally involved in that. But that's what they're claiming is 85% first choices are still there. Now, there are schools that are specialty schools, like immersion schools, that will not be in everybody's neighborhood, and people will have to apply, and it'll be an independent choice to go out of the neighborhood to get into a school of your choice in some instances. We're trying to improve all the schools in each neighborhood so that you feel like you have a Lowell or a Lincoln or Washington that's good performing, that the kids and the teachers are all enthusiastic about the quality of education in all of the neighborhoods. And as we are doing that, hopefully it will lessen the pressure on just focusing on a reputable school. And that's what we're trying to do here, because everybody wants their first choice, and there's just not enough room for that. So we had to have some level of lottery system that's there. And I've heard the worst parts of those stories. I've had parents crying in front of me because they believe their kid's future is about that one choice. And we've got to get past that. And the only way you get past that is not by forcing them to consider things, it's by really creating reputable schools in their neighborhood, and we have to do that more.
All right, well, please join me in thanking Mayor Lee. It was a pleasure to have
Thank
you here.
Thank you very much.
I hope you come back again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.